Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I will be sharing with you details about the simulation basis manager, right? The simulation basis manager found in the Aspen Hysys software. Now, the simulation basis manager can be accessed via a new document or an already existing document, via a new case or an already existing case. So now this is our startup environment that we discussed in the last lecture. So if you want to get to this simulation basis manager, for example, in a new document, you click on new. Right, so you click on new, you double click on new, and then it takes you to the simulation basis manager directly. Now this is your simulation basis manager via a new document. It is also known as the properties environment, right? So if you look at towards the bottom left, you will see that the properties environment is highlighted. What it means is that we are currently in the properties environment, right? So this is how to access it via a new document. For an already existing document, if you are in your simulation environment and you want to go back to the simulation basis manager, all you need to do is to click on properties, right? So if you click on properties, it takes you back to the simulation basis manager, right? So now I will try to give a brief explanation of what happens in this particular window, the simulation basis manager. Okay, before that, we have our objectives for this particular lecture, right? The first one is understanding of what is being done in the simulation basis environment, and the second one is understanding of the different specifications to be made in the simulation basis manager for different kinds of simulations, right? So now the simulation basis manager, which is also known as the properties environment, is a section in the Aspen Hysys software, right, where you specify the basis of the process you are about to simulate or model, right? So you make specifications that would govern that particular model, right? And those specifications are very key as they would affect the output of that model or simulation, right? So whatever you specify in the simulation basis manager is what the software will use to calculate and give you analysis after you have finished simulation. So whatever results you are getting from your simulation, one of the things that influences it is whatever you specify in the simulation basis manager, right? Apart from the conditions you will be specifying in the flow sheets, the parameters, their values. Apart from that, one of the things that affects your simulation is whatever it is you specify in the simulation basis manager. And this is why the simulation basis manager is very important in the modeling of processes using the Aspen Hysys software. So now, in the simulation basis manager, mostly you are expected to specify things like the components involved in the process, the property package, then reactions, right? Then you can, in some cases, you can characterize your components depending if, for example, if they are hypocomponents, you may want to calculate their properties. Then if you are using maybe the oil manager, or you are using the petroleum assay feature, you may want to characterize your components before you get into the simulation environment, right? So majorly you are expected to specify your components, your property package, and then in case of models that have reactions, you specify the reaction model for that particular process, right? Now, so for the simulation basis manager specification, the general rule is that you must specify components and property package, right? For you to simulate any kind of process, it is basic that you must specify at least one component and at least one fluid package, no matter the kind of simulation, no matter the kind of model, no matter the kind of process you want to simulate. You must specify at least your components and your fluid package, right? Now, so going back to the simulation basis manager, you specify your components, then your fluid package. Then if the process has a reaction, you would have to specify your reaction. But if it doesn't, after you specify your components and your fluid package, you can then go into the simulation environment, right? So let's go back to our slide. Now, property packages, in simple terms, they are just they are models, mathematical equations that were developed in order to be used for the determination of the properties of fluids, right? So if you want to determine the values for certain fluid properties, you would use fluid packages or property packages to do that, right? So they are also known as equation of state, right? Equation of state, EOS, right? So they help you determine the property values of fluids at a particular given state, right? So that's what they are. Now, let's see this document. So for EOS, we have a lot of fluid packages, a lot of property packages, right? The most popular one is the ideal gas equation, right? The ideal gas equation is the most popular kind of fluid package. In fact, most of the other fluid packages were developed as a result of the ideal gas equation. So you have the ideal gas equation, then you have the I think the next one should be the Van der Waal equation, right? Yes. Yeah, the Van der Waal equation. Then you have a couple of others that were also developed based on the Van der Waal equation. So from this particular document, you have three classes. You have three classes of EOS. Three classes. You have the first class, second class, and third class. The first class includes mostly cubic equations of states. For example, the Van der Waal is an example of a cubic equation of state, and then all the other equations of states that were derived from the Van der Waal equation. For example, the Penn-Robinson, the Redlich-Kwong and then the Suave Redlich-Kwong, right? So all of them are examples of the cubic equation of states, which is under the first class EOS. Then you have the second class EOS, which are non-cubic, and then you have the third class EOS as well, right? The third class EOS. So there are a lot of fluid packages. In fact, these popular ones also have modifications that have been done on them in recent times. So you can do more research about equation of states and then property package, fluid package, right? So normally how it works is that this fluid package is what the software uses to do most of the calculations it does in determining the properties of streams, in the simulation, right, in the flow sheet. So most of those results you get from the software are based on these fluid packages, these property packages, right? So most of the time the fluid properties are determined using these equations. So moving on, we'll go back to the simulation basis manager. So we have this right here as our simulation basis manager. It also has some features similar to the startup environment, right? You have your minimize, maximize, and close at your top right. Then at the top left, you have the toolbar, the quick access toolbar. Then you have your file, which we discussed in our last lecture. Then you have home, you have view, customize, and resources. Now here you have the navigation pane. The navigation pane consists of the component list, fluid package, the petroleum assay, reactions, component maps, and user properties, right? Depending on which one you want to specify, you can click on them and make your specifications. Then below the navigation pane, you have the properties bar, you have the simulation, the safety analysis, energy analysis. So you could click on any of them to go into that particular environment. Then you have the status and the trace windows. Right? Then what else do we have? Okay, that's it. Then you have your zoom in and zoom out, right? Now you can see that the component list it has this red circle or red semicircle by the side, as well as the fluid package. And then in the status window, you have required info, fluid package, and the required info, components. It says empty component list and select property package, right? So these two are necessities for you to start your simulation. So you cannot start your simulation without them, right? You can't even get into the simulation environment without specifying the components and the property package, right? So if you clicked on simulation directly, you will get this notification right here that you cannot leave the properties environment until you have entered a fluid package for your flow sheets to use. You have attached a component list to each fluid package. Each component list has a minimum of one component specified. One of your fluid packages is specified as the default fluid package, right? So you see, you must have at least one fluid package in your simulation case at all times, right? So you see, you cannot leave this simulation basis manager until you have specified your component list and your fluid package, right? And now in this home ribbon, you have the navigate section, you have the component section, you have the refining, hypotheticals, oil, and then PVT data. So most of these features would actually be explained in future tutorials, right? They will be explained one after the other so that this video will not be too long. Then you have your clipboard where you have cut, copy, and paste, right? Now in this navigate section, most of what is here is what you have in your navigation pane, right? So you have component list, you have fluid package, petroleum assay, reaction, you have component list here, you have fluid package, you have reaction, then you have user properties. So most of the things you have here, you still have them here, so you can access them either way. So for example, if you want to specify your fluid package, you could either click on this or you could click on this, right? So for component list, the same thing. Fluid package, the same thing. You could use either the navigate section in your home tab or you use the navigation pane, right? So if you want to specify components, for example, you click on it, right? Make sure it's highlighted, then you click on add, right? So if you click on add, you get the opportunity of specifying components. Now before we do that, let me close this and come back. Okay, I want to delete this. So if you want to delete a component list, for example, you want to delete a component list, you highlight that particular component list, ensure it's highlighted by left clicking, then you right click and then you click on delete, right? So once you do that, it deletes that particular component list. You can also do that for fluid packages, right? Even for reactions too, you could also use that method to delete reactions. So if you want to specify your component list, you click on it, you left click and then you click add, right? But before we go there, we have two sources for choosing components or specifying components in the Aspen Hysys software. So we have the Hysys data banks and then we have the Aspen properties database, right? So you could choose components from either of them, right? Any of them, but most people tend to use the Hysys data banks, which is default, right? So if you, let me delete this. So if you clicked on component list and you click add, you are automatically adding components from the Hysys data banks, right? From the Hysys data banks. Now if you go back there and you use the properties instead, so you use the properties, this is how it looks like, the Aspen properties database, right? So it's quite different from the Hysys data banks, right? So the default is the Hysys data banks, right? That's what most people use to specify components. Now here you can either specify, in these Hysys data banks, you can specify pure components or you can specify hypothetical components as well, right? So hypothetical is for liquid and gas, that's fluid, and then you have hypothetical solid, right? So if what you are specifying is either a liquid or a gas, you use hypothetical. Then if it's a solid, you use the hypothetical solid, right? So now here there are a lot of things you can do depending on the components you want to choose, right? So if you open this Hysys data bank and you are already seeing the component you want, you can just left click on it and then click add, right? So you left click and click add. So once it comes over to this other section by the left, right? By the left, towards the left, where you have source data bank Hysys. By the time you click add and it comes over here, you have specified that particular component as part of the components involved in that process, right? So if whatever components you want to use are visible on your screen, you can just click on them and click add, right? If they are many and they are together, they are close, you can hold down control, right? Control, and then left click on all of them, right? You hold control and left click on all of them and then click add. So it automatically adds all of them at once rather than adding them individually, right? Or you can hold down shift, right? So let's say we want to add components from N-hexane, right, to C11, NC11, right? So you highlight N-hexane, right? Then you hold shift. You hold down shift and then you click on NC11. Okay, so by the time you highlight both the first and the last components that you want to add to your component list while holding down shift, right? Shift on your keyboard, right? It highlights all the components that are in between also. Then you can now click add. So you can either use the control and then click on all the components you want to add to your component list individually in order to highlight all of them, or you could select a range and use shift, right? So you just click on the first and the last. So while using shift, you click on the first and the last components, then it highlights all that are in between. Or when you use control, you have to click on each of them, right, in order to highlight all of them before you add all of them as a group, right? So that's it. So that's for components that are visible. Now for components that are not readily visible, for example, if I want to add oxygen, I can't see oxygen at the moment, so you could use this search bar, right? So you can type oxygen right there. You can type it and then oxygen appears and is already highlighted, and then you can click add, right? So oxygen has been added to the components, if you can see my cursor, right? So now for this search, right, for the search, you can edit how you search by using the filter and the search by, right? Filter and the search by. So for filter, you can specify which family that particular component belongs, right? So specifying it will make it easier for you to search for it, right? For example, if I click on alcohol, okay, let me try alcohol. Now alcohol. Now when I click on alcohol, whatever I'm searching for should be an alcohol, right? If I type, for example, if I type let me see, if I type water, I would not be able to find it, right? And that is because the filter has narrowed down the search to alcohols. So I'm supposed to just be searching for only alcohols. I shouldn't be searching for water based on what I specified in the filter, right? If I change it back to all families, right? By the time I change it back to all families, let me see, have I added water already? No, I haven't. Okay. By the time I change it back to all families and then I type water, Let me type it properly. Right? Oh, I pressed. Sorry about that. I pressed delete. Let me see. Enter. Oh. 1, 2, 3. Seems like it has already been added. Okay, I didn't want to add it like that. Remove. Okay, so now by the time I type all families and then I type water becomes visible, right? But if I go back and choose alcohols, right, it will show me no components because the filter has been narrowed to just alcohols. So the search has been narrowed down to alcohols, right? So water only comes up when I use all families, right? All families means all the components in the database can be searched for, right? Then if you want to search, let me see. Okay, so that's it. Yes. So all families signify that all the functional groups can be searched for at that particular time, right? Yeah. So that's it. So you can either broaden or narrow your search. Then you can also choose how you want it to be searched for, how the component should be searched for, either via the simulation name, full name, or formula. So if you choose formula, for example, if you choose formula and you are writing the name of the component, you will not find it, right? So if you want to find water, you have to write the chemical formula for water, which is H2O, right? So it only appears as H2O because the search by is on formula, right? So when it's on formula, you would only be able to search for components by specifying their chemical formula, right? So that is how to add pure components from the Aspen data banks, right? Then from here we have add, replace, and then remove, right? So if you want to remove a particular component that you specified, all you need to do is to highlight it. You highlight it and then you click on remove. So it removes oxygen. Oxygen is no longer in our component list. If you want to remove a group of components, you highlight all of them, either using control, holding down control and then clicking on them, or you can use shift, right? Then you click on remove and it removes them. So if you want to use shift, you click on the first, you hold down shift and then you click on the last. Okay, you click on the first, you hold down shift and then you click on the last. Sorry, you click on the first, you hold down shift and then you click on the last. Let me do this again. Okay. Yep. Yes. So you click on the first, then you hold down shift and then you click on the last. So it highlights everything, both the first, the last, and the components in between, right? Yeah, so it's faster than using control. Then you can click on remove and then removes everything as a group. Then you also have replace, right? So if you want to replace, for example, you want to replace you want to replace propane in your component list with N-pentane, right? You ensure that the two components involved are highlighted, right? So I want to replace N-pentane with propane, right? So you ensure that both of them are highlighted and then you click replace, right? So you see that N-pentane from the data banks has been added to the component list, while propane that was in the component list has been sent back to the data bank, right? And you can also do the reverse by still clicking on replace again, right? So if you click on replace again, it has taken propane back to the component list, and it has taken n-pentane back to the data bank, right? So this is how to specify pure components, right? Pure components. The hypotheticals will be taken in another lecture, right? Now, going over to fluid package, property package, right? For property package, still the same procedure. You make sure the property package is highlighted in your navigation pane so that this window can appear. Then you click on add, right? So again, the default is the Hysys data banks, right? The Hysys data banks is the default. So if you click on this, you can change it to either the Aspen properties or the ComThermo, right? So for component list, we have two sources for adding components. You have the Hysys data banks and then the Aspen properties. For fluid package, you have the fluid package. Ensure it's highlighted, like I said. For fluid package, you have the Hysys data banks, the Aspen properties, and the ComThermo, right? So whichever you want to use, you just click on it. And okay, let me go back. Okay, it says it cannot even be deleted. I'll just add a new one. So whichever you want to use, you click on it and then you click add, right? So in this case, when I clicked on add, right, it automatically gives me the fluid packages from the default, which is the Hysys data banks, right? So if you don't want to change it, normally if you want to use Hysys data banks, you just click on add directly, right? Just click on it directly and it takes you to the Hysys data banks. So I can delete this other two. I can delete them. You left click on them, then you right click and then click delete, right? So I'm working with this one, which is still the source is the Hysys data bank. So these are the fluid packages, the property packages that are embedded in the Hysys data banks, right? These are the property packages embedded in the Hysys data bank. So you can just pick any random one you like. For example, I can pick Ben Robinson, right? Just for illustration, right? So now if your fluid package is compatible with your components, you will receive this message, okay, right? Okay. But in a case where the fluid package is not compatible, Hysys will send you a message and tell you that the property package is not compatible with certain components. It is going to list those components, those particular components that the fluid package is not compatible with, right? In that case, you are expected to choose another fluid package, right? So also that will be taken in another lecture, right? How to know which fluid package is right for a particular component list, right? So because fluid packages are supposed to be dependent on the kind of components you choose for that particular process. So based on the components you choose, you are supposed to choose your fluid package, right? So that will also be taken in another lecture, right? So in this lecture, I introduced you to the simulation basis manager, right? And then I introduced you to how to add components, to your process, then how to add property packages as well, right? Especially from the Aspen data banks, right? So that is what I have introduced you to in this particular lecture, right? So I hope you have gained knowledge from this lecture, right? If you have questions based on what has been said in this particular lecture, drop them in the comments section. Like this video and follow, subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so yet, so that you can get notifications for future tutorials, right? So you could try out some of the things that have been done today. You could try them out. Just try and see how these things work, right? Because practice will always help you get better at what you do, and then it will help you discover new things as well, right? So with this, we have come to the end of this lecture. Thank you for joining me and have a nice day.